So as a person, human being, an individuated unit of consciousness, my thoughts are for the most part confined to my own head. Whether or not my thoughts for the most part originate entirely in my head, or whether or not there's some kind of enmeshment out there, I can't perceive if there is. So for the most part, the only thing that I know is that I am. Whether other people are or not, I have no clue. Whether this is a figment of my imagination, I have no clue. This world can injure me, so I have to take this with, to some degree, a grain of salt, even though it comes across by our standards as what we conceive as real, a consensual environment of sorts. Because you don't know what's going on in my head and vice versa. You know that also, meaning you're also aware that I can't read your thoughts. All of us are. So we make certain accommodations in the way that we interact with one another. You communicate to me what's going on in your head. Now, you do this, in a sense of just honest reactions. This is what I honestly think. But you also do this in dishonest reactions. Meaning, in order for me to know what's going on in your head, you have to project that in some particular way. You have to communicate that. And sometimes people aren't always comfortable communicating the real thing, in which case they can put on a mask. However, a lot of that communication is nonverbal, so even then it leaks out. And even when they put on the mask, sometimes the mask in and of itself gets across discontent. We communicate with each other in somewhat complicated ways. Campaigns are no different than this. They're just an extension of the individual, just like everything else is. The campaign has to communicate to you what's going on in their heads. What are they thinking about? What are their intentions? What is the thing that's important to them? There's the overt level of this, and then there's the undercurrents of this, meaning there's the things that they're communicating to you verbally, they're the things that they're communicating to you non-verbally. Elizabeth Warren's campaign, with less than a month to go for Iowa and New Hampshire. You have Sanders, who's talking about Iran, the killing of Soleimani, almost nonstop on the Sunday networks. And you have Warren, lady of the dance, wild gesticulations, and the way that she's throwing her body about this Theresa May moment. My basic point is this. She's taken a particular perspective of trying to communicate something to the public. And she does it in some of the most awkward and weirdest ways. I'm talking about these selfies. Elizabeth Warren at her campaign stop with Julian Castro, who at this point is probably regretting the decision to join it. At the very least, it's the look on his face when he's on the stage and she's throwing her body about. Look at his face. He's like, yeah, yep, that's her dancing. Yep, she's getting in. Look, in another part of this, she does a selfie line. It's forced, it's awkward, it's strange. I understand her reasoning for it. I understand what she's trying to communicate in regards to doing it. By the same token, it comes across to some degree as inauthentic. And because none of the other campaigns does it, it rises it to the certain level of a talking point. She even mentions it when she's on a debate stage. But just because you do selfies, what does it tangibly matter? And do you honestly believe that the public itself looks at those selfies and says, yes, she gets more political points from me because she takes pictures with people who come to see her at her rallies? I think this is incomprehensibly irrelevant in regards to whether or not she gets any political points from this. And at this point, it's just kind of strange and awkward. Welcome to the Soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content, please like, share, subscribe. You can always support PayPal, Patreon, This content is brought to you by you, and I thank you for the opportunity to allow me to do it. So Warren, while she's out here dancing, she's doing her thing, she's cutting the rug. Sanders, like I said, has been talking a lot about Iran and the potential for war. He's been talking heavily about foreign policy at this point, including withdrawing troops from the various countries. Warren is trying to communicate something with the selfies. In fact, let me show you what I'm talking about. Take a look at this. On the debate stage, she mentioned the selfies. This is her with Julian Castro, who, again, supporting a failing campaign and is probably regretting that choice. Listen to Warren and look at how awkward this is.
So here's what we're going to do tonight. I'm going to talk a little bit, for any of you who don't know me, tell you a little bit about myself. Tell you, I'm going to do this. I'm going to tell you a little bit about why I'm in this fight. And then we're going to do something historic, right at the center of democracy. Julian and I, for the first time in history, we're going to stand here and do double selfies. And everybody's
We're going to stand here and do double selfies. Early on, you're standing beside one Bernie Sanders. In the 2016 race, you realized that it hurt you, or at the very least it hurt Clinton, when she took those speeches, not to mention she was taking the money. And from the standpoint of Sanders, who's not taking that money, he looks like a paragon of virtue. He's trusted on that point because he's not taking their cash, and he's been consistent with that particular strident point of view. It's ideological. It digs in him. People, whether they agree with him or not, at the very least understand where he comes from on this point, and they can trust that point. Great. So you need to run against him in 2020. That person who looks like a paragon of virtue in the sense of not taking the billionaire's cash, as they call it. So what do? You say, I'm also not going to do that. The problem is you did transfer money from your Senate campaign to your presidential campaign, and you were going to take that money when you left the primaries. Meaning, if you won, you were going to resume taking the money that you've taken all of those X number of years prior in your political career in Congress. The only reason you would do that is because you don't want to get that money staying on you, standing beside somebody like Sanders. Ultimately, your entire campaign, meaning Warren's, depended upon getting a section of Sanders' base to believe her. She's younger, sounds like him, so, fair enough. That was part of the point. And if Sanders is standing there not taking cash, and you are, just like you always have, and that you are expected to do once you leave, it looks bad. It looks bad. The same motif takes place that was taking place in 2016. So Warren's thing is, fine, I'm not going to take that cash either. I'm going to do it by fundraising. And then later on in the campaign, when she was doing well, she says, all right, now I'm going to cut the tether to taking the money later, because that hurts me if somebody points out the fact that it doesn't really make sense that you're not taking it now, but you're going to take it later. Now, Buttigieg did point that out in one of the debates. Warren's thing is, with the selfie stuff is, I am grassroots, just like Sanders. And she's trying to use this to get this point across in these real terms of, I am so grassroots, I am so plugged into the community of people that I just take billions of selfies. I have more selfies than anyone else on the planet, and I'm proud of that. Congratulations, okay. Give her Guinness Book of World Records in regards to selfies, and let's get on in the business of the campaign. Sanders, what were you saying about Soleimani before we were interrupted with Warren's forced, awkward, painfully, incomprehensibly irrelevant selfies? This doesn't matter. And she continues to make a big deal about it. It's awkward, and it doesn't ultimately matter. There are major, major issues afoot that are taking place. And she's out here dancing and taking selfies. Why do you need to do that? Meaning, what is the selfies covering in this case? If you want to communicate to people that you're grassroots funded, fair enough. If you want to communicate to people that you are not bought because you're taking all of these selfies, fair enough. If you want to communicate that you're not taking money in the wine cave, well, you're not doing it at this very moment. You were doing it a few years back. The issue is authenticity. And I don't think you get that just by having this the selfie stuff. It's just strange. That's all. I mean, granted, Warren can do whatever she wants to do with her campaign, but friendly advice. It is nice that you interact with your audience. It is nice that you're plugged into your audience. But the selfie thing comes across as just kind of a surface, I don't know, forced authenticity or something. It's ultimately, though, I don't know what you get out of this, meaning bang for your buck politically. I understood what it tried to do prior, and I understood the intentions behind it, but at a certain point, it almost like it misses the point. To put so much emphasis and continue to do this over and over and over and over and over again, the question has to be asked in the campaign, are we getting anything from taking this much energy and exerting this much energy to do this particular selfie item or the selfie motif? And look, I could be entirely wrong. I always make that caveat. Maybe there are people who are going to her rallies and I like taking this selfie with her. She's awesome, so now I'm going to vote for her because I took a selfie with her. That's possible. Those people, however, were already at her rallies if they were going to get a selfie taken with Elizabeth Warren. All I'm saying is, it's your campaign, do you, boo? It's yours. But I am dramatically skeptical that anything becomes of the selfie stuff. And this just seems forced.
So here's what we're going to do tonight. I'm going to talk a little bit, for any of you who don't know me, tell you a little bit about myself. Tell you, I'm going to do this. I'm going to tell you a little bit about why I'm in this fight. And then we're going to do something historic, right at the center of democracy. Julian and I, for the first time in history, we're going to stand here and do double selfies. And everybody's
at the center of democracy. Julian and I. It just seems so forced. That's all. I could be wrong. I don't see the benefit of this. I understood initially what she was trying to do, but at a certain point, you do it for so long, it's almost like it just has a momentum of its own where it just kind of keeps going. But I don't see it. And maybe because I'm not a Warren supporter, I mean, maybe there's a bang for your buck in jazzing up the audience. I know when I met Worf in Star Trek, I didn't get a good feel for him. He seemed like he was disengaged and didn't want to be there, as opposed to meeting Data, who was extremely engaged, in which case. But those are different factors. This is a political campaign. People who are in this and who are going to this stuff is looking for political concessions in their government. I think the selfies matter less from the standpoint of whether or not the person thinks you're authentic and you will implement a certain policy proposals that you are talking about, or that at the very least Sanders is talking about. But teach their own. And again, I could be wrong. But the selfie stuff is just getting awkward. Like, share, subscribe.